So starting with the balance of payments, one of the most favored topic in macroeconomics. What do you mean by the balance of payments altogether? Can India become a lender of money to other countries? Now, balance on trade. What is a balance of trade? An asset is in any form of wealth. For example, stocks, bonds, government debt. Balance on capital account is the balance when the capital inflows. Good morning and welcome to the next session on Chapter 12, Open Economy. This class is going to be very interesting as we are going to learn some of the fundamental concepts of macroeconomy, especially on the open economy. So let's have a quick look into what are the topics that we are going to cover today. So starting with the balance of payments, one of the most favored topic in macroeconomics, balance on current account, balance on trade, capital account, and balance on capital account. We are also going to talk about official reserve sale, autonomous and accommodating transactions. So these are some of the topics that we are going to look in today. So let's have a quick look into the balance of payments. Now the balance of payment, what do you mean by the balance of payments altogether? Now you as a country, you need to understand that there are different types of account a country would like to have when it comes to trade. So you have a current account. In the current account, you are going to record the trade transaction in terms of goods and services. So you are going to record it saying that what is the transaction that you have done with other nation in terms of the transfer payment. So we are going to underline this word called as transfer payments. Why? Because you are transferring money to other countries. Trade in goods includes your exports and imports. That's a very, very fundamental part of any economics that you are going to learn today. Why? Because you are going to understand the trade in terms of your imports and exports. And this includes the factor income and non-factor income. We had spoken about the factor income and non-factor income in the previous chapters. So here we are going to understand the concept of imports and exports, which is going to form a crucial part of the trade cycle. And transfer payments are the receipts which the residents of the country get for free without having any goods or services in return. That's what the government is going to give back to you in terms of benefits or in terms of concessions altogether. So let us try to understand a quick recap on the balance of payments. Now, when you have a current account, that account itself is used by the country for trading purpose. It is not like a savings account, it's a trading account. So whatever goods, whatever services that you are going to buy, that you are going to give to other countries are going to be transacted using this particular account. So the goods can be in the form of imports and exports, and transfer of payments will be the receipts that you are going to get for free from the government side. Now moving forward, balance on current account. So is there going to be a balance with this, or that we are going to keep something as a reminder? Let's have a look into this. Current account is in balance when the receipts of the current account is equal to the payments of the current account. So if I am not going to keep back anything as a reminder, so I'm going to make an equation very clear here that is in balance when receipts of the current account are equal to the payment. So I'm going to keep this word in mind for you. Receipts is equal to payment. I want you to keep this keywords in mind. R is equal to P. Receipts is equal to payment. So it is very much in place. It is very much in tandem. And they are in balance altogether. Next, a surplus current account. When you say something is in surplus, when the nation is a lender to other countries, very, very interesting factor altogether. Can India become a lender of money to other countries? Definitely yes. If we have surplus of cash reserve, probably we could also become a nation in this world where we could lend money to other countries in the form of help, in the form of trade benefits. And of course, India has been a lending nation to several countries in the world. We have helped several African countries. We have also provided loan assistance to the local Asian countries like Sri Lanka. We have done to Bhutan. We have done to Burma. We have helped a lot in terms of lending money. So at that point of time, we call this as a surplus current account, which means we are lender. We have excess of money there where we can lend to the other countries or to the other nation. Now, the other way around, deficit current account, that means we are the borrowers of the loan altogether. That is quite obvious because when you look at a country like India, we have borrowed a lot of money from the IMF, from the World Bank, from the Asian Development Bank, and probably the BRICS Bank also. Why? Because we are in need of money for infrastructural support, for healthcare, for education, for trade and services. So there have been many a times where India has been facing the role of a borrower from all this leading nation. At that point of time, what I call myself as a deficit current account, because I am not having enough money. So I need to borrow money from other countries to run my trade system altogether. Now moving forward. Now, balance on trade. What is a balance of trade? Balance of trade is the difference between value of exports and value of imports of the goods of a country in a given period of time. Now that is very, very important. So we are going to mark certain keywords. Difference between exports, the value of exports, value of imports. One keyword, of a country in a given period of time. Now these are the words that you need to keep in your mind when you write your exam, when you try to understand the open economy. Now, is there a balance of trade? Are we not supposed to complete the trade in one cycle? But in reality, let's try to understand why balance of trade first of all exists in an economy. Many a time when countries get into an open economy, a cycle, when they start trading with each other, there are possibilities that the government might not be in a position to pay back the value in one shot. So there might be situations where the export value is higher than the import value, or vice versa. Import is higher than the export value. So in that situation, automatically a balance of trade is being created. You will not be able to help over it, but then it is quite eventual. It is quite natural to see that a balance of trade is created. And that is quite natural. Why? Because let's take the case of India itself. Now when we trade with Saudi Arabia for oil and for petroleum, there's automatically a balance of trade that is being created because we import oil from them. We also export certain goods to that country. So there will be a balance. There will be a mix and match altogether. Now, what is the meaning of net invisibles? Why is that very, very important? Is the difference between the value of exports, value of imports invisible for a given period of time. So is that something called as invisible altogether? Why you call it as invisible? Why? Because sometimes these are the transactions which are not written down on the book of records. These are something which are being found over a period of time. Why? Because we need to understand the record of transaction. They are not bluntly or blatantly written on the books. So there are certain values which might not be profoundly seen in the transaction purpose altogether. So that is why net invisibles play a very, very important role when it comes to the balance of trade altogether. Now moving forward. Capital account. What is the capital account? Which will record all the international transaction of the assets. So that's very, very important keyword here, international transaction of assets. An asset is in any form of wealth. For example, stocks, bonds, government debt, whatever you're going to talk about. So let's talk about this. What is the capital account altogether? Now, India as a country would also be interested in investing in some of the top countries across the globe. So for example, India might buy out a government bond in US. India might invest on the infrastructure of Europe. So now what happens here is that we need to have a capital account that will record for all the transactions that India has made in the form of investing in other countries. That are the international assets altogether. Now, if you predominantly look, India has got a lot of strategic tie-up with Dubai. because Indian companies and the Indian technocrats and bureaucrats, a lot of people, Indian businessmen altogether, have made several investments in the Middle East, especially in the country Dubai. Now, if you start looking there, India has invested for their infrastructural growth. India has invested for their educational reforms. India has invested in terms of their healthcare reforms altogether. So these are all the factors where you see the capital account is being used to record all the international transactions, international asset forms altogether. So an asset can be in any form of the wealth. So it might be in the form of stocks, it might be in the form of land, it might be in the form of bonds. Why do we do this? Is because we feel that there is a scope of growth. There is an opportunity of growth in those countries. So when you invest on a particular sector, when you invest on a specific expertise altogether, there is a chance for the country to give better returns, better growth altogether. So that is why we use this capital account and we record all the transactions in the form of international assets altogether. So now moving forward, we also need to understand the balance on the capital account. Now the balance on capital account, moving forward from the capital account factor, balance on capital account is the balance when the capital inflows. When I say inflows, let's understand the word, that is loans from abroad, sale of assets, shares of the foreign companies are equal to capital outflows. Now it is a difference between inflow and outflow. These two factors have to be kept in your mind clearly. What is an outflow? Outflow can be like repayment of loans. Now you're talking about purchase of assets or shares in the foreign country. So you would be probably interested to know how is this going to happen. Now, for example, when you are doing a trading with your capital account, that means you will get a lot of receipts. You might get income from abroad, a lot of people sending you money from abroad, you are selling your assets, you are selling the bonds, you are selling the shares of those foreign companies. So automatically India would get a lot of money in terms of euros, dollars, or for example in form of dinars or yens or possibly whatever foreign currencies in which we are dealing with. But at the same time, India is also repaying back its debt. That's a very important concept. We have been taking a lot of loan right from the year 1991 onwards, and we have also made it a point that at every given point of time we have been repaying back those money in the form of assets classifications or shares or whatever possible factors altogether. So whenever we are going to purchase any asset internationally, whenever we are going to repay back some loans, whenever we are going to invest in some assets, that is going to be a capital outflow from our side. So that's going to be a brilliant factor in terms of understanding the capital inflow versus capital outflow. Now, surplus in capital account when capital inflows are greater than the capital outflows. This is quite true. Why? Because if you look at India, more than 34% of the world immigration report says that Indians have migrated to such a great extent to every corner of the world. There are only two countries which have this kind of a migration capacity. One is India, the other one are the China by default. Now, if you look at the Indians and the Chinese, they are working in almost every single country across the globe, especially when you look at Canada, USA, Germany, UK, in the Middle East countries, and to several other European countries altogether, especially even if you look at the APAC countries also. So because of this, what happens is that they send a lot of money back to their home country. So India and China will definitely have a lot of capital inflows coming in the form of foreign income. So at that point of juncture, we need to understand, suppose the inflow is greater than the outflow, that is the amount of money that is received by the Indian government is higher from the foreign receipts and the foreign payments rather than the payments that we are going to make, rather than the outflows, then we are in a surplus position altogether. On the other hand, it is a deficit because suppose the capital account, when we are making payments, that is the outflow is higher than the inflow. Now, if there is a situation when India is paying more money than what it receives from abroad, automatically that scenario leads to a deficit capital altogether. So these are the common factors, these are the common things that you need to know when you study about an open economy in any newspaper, in any of the articles altogether. Why? Because these factors are very, very mandatory for us to know, understand India's position in the global map as a trade personality, as a trading country altogether. Many times when we read through the articles, whenever we read through our own syllabus, whenever we come across to different news that are trying to talk about India as a leading agent, India as a manufacturing hub, India as a trading destination, all these data, all these facts will definitely make a difference to you, and you will be able to understand the concept better. So that's why we need to keep in mind capital account, balance of trade, all these factors when we read macroeconomics. Now, moving forward, we are also going to talk about official reserve sale. Now, the Reserve Bank of India sells foreign exchange when there is a deficit. Now, this is a very, very important factor altogether. Suddenly, let us imagine, due to some emergency or due to some factor, we do not have enough reserves to support ourselves. We do not have enough money. So what does the RBI do? RBI will go ahead and sell the foreign exchange. Fortunately, in India, there has not been a situation like this post 1991, post the liberalization and privatization and globalization. It has been a constant inflow, and currently if you see that India's FDI, that is the foreign capital inflow, the forex reserve, is crossed more than $500 billion. So we are somewhere around at that range. We have really gone ahead from 1.2 billion to that of $500 billion today. So we have created a huge forex reserve altogether. But there be a condition, unfortunately, where RBI is not able to serve our country. We are not able to balance our country because of a shortage. Then automatically RBI will sell those foreign exchange in the market and get some official reserve sale. So that is what we call it, because RBI is the only authorized person who is being given the permission to take over the foreign exchange, sell it across on behalf of India and get the money back. Now, the decrease or increase in official reserve is called as overall balance of payment deficit or surplus. Now, you have both the factors here. In case if it's a decrease, we will call it deficit. In case if it's an increase, we call it as surplus. So this word increase will lead to surplus, decrease will lead to deficit. So this word is a key word for us. Moment D for deficit is equal to decrease also. So moment it decreases, you will also lead to deficit altogether. It's an increase, it will lead to surplus altogether. So it's easy to remember. Moment the forex reserves decrease, it is equal to deficit. It increases by official reserve sale, it leads to surplus. Moving forward. Autonomous and accommodating transaction. International economic transactions are called as autonomous when the transactions are made due to some reason other than bridging the gap in terms of balance of payments. Now, that's quite an amount of theory for us to understand. Now, if you start understanding that there are certain payments which are done because we have to do it, it's a cyclic function, and it is one of the matters of trade transaction altogether. Now, there might be certain trade pacts that have been signed by India with certain countries, let's say with the G7 countries or G14, G13, whatever kind of arrangements that we have with the global trading countries. We have an autonomous transaction. Automatically, it has to happen, and it has been happening over a period of time. Now, that transaction is not equal to balance of payment. We are not talking about the receipts there. That is, balance of payment is a separate concept altogether. We cannot mix and match there. This autonomous transaction has been happening over a period of time without even the intervention of RBI or without even the intervention of government or a third party agent coming into picture. It is being done because it is mandatorily carried forward with certain rules, with certain regulations, with certain structure in place. Whereas in the case of balance of payment, we will try to see whether we are on a surplus, whether we are on a deficit, and then we will try to bridge the gap altogether. The second factor, accommodating transactions. Now, below the line items. Why do we say that? Is because we are going to determine the gap. When we are trying to understand the word accommodating itself, we are trying to accommodate, we are trying to bridge certain gaps. We are certain to fill in certain amount of factors that will help us to balance the payments altogether, the gap in balance of payments. Why this is mandatory, why this is needed for us is that sometimes there might be a huge gap in the balance of payments. Sometimes there might be a situation where we have overseen the balance of payment. Automatically now what happens, that starts hitting hard on the economy, that starts hitting hard on the trade impact of the country. So what do we do at that point of time? We have to do accommodating transactions. We have to put below the line. We need to understand that we need to fill up this gap. We need to make a provision in such a way that the balance of payments is taken care of and then automatically proceed forward to the next line. This is why we need to understand the autonomous and the accommodating transaction. So the word itself, it's very clear. You can have a hint here, autonomous, auto. The word, keyword which you see here, auto. Autonomous means automatically it happens. You don't have to worry about it. It is already set in. Accommodating. The word keyword here, ACCO, ACO, which means you need to start understanding that we have to make a provision. Autonomous, by automatic, by default. Accommodating, you need to create a balance, you need to create a provision for this. With this, we come to the conclusion for today's session. I hope and believe that this session was interesting, informative, and educative for you. In the next session, we shall start seeing about the foreign exchange, the types of foreign exchange, and what do they mean in an open economy altogether. Until then, goodbye, good luck, and thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session.